I think I always wanted to study art. My mother studied art. Maybe I just wanted to be a good daughter or just like my mother. I like to draw. I was good at drawing people's faces, hands, feet, bodies. Everybody, I liked when people said, wow, that's great. So, and then we had at home a lot of art books, so I was reading, looking and drawing and then, yeah. So in the beginning I just thought that's what I can do best. I can draw. I'm not so good at mathematics maybe and other things, so I thought it was logical. I really liked the style of Toulouse-Lautrec and Egon Schiele. I liked the lines, but I didn't see how it could reflect a modern feeling. And then when I had the white page, I didn't know what to do besides the human figure. And I found it doesn't reflect my feelings of what I want to say. A body. So I really enjoyed when I had a camera, because then I didn't have to worry about white. I did something and it was something. So then I could go think about, why is this something? So I didn't have to, deal with the white nothing. I felt like that it describes modern feelings about TV, television, movies, advertising, that it was some kind of film in our psyche that describes more what we feel than maybe a classical painting. It was a reporter camera. It was a Nikon F2, which is very sturdy. It's made to withhold a lot of dust, desert. I heard it was used for also, I think, war, because it was unbreakable, very sturdy, and it was from my father, and it came with a complete lens set, telephoto, wide angle, and I never use any lenses. I just like normal vision. And it was the camera, I think also my father's first real camera. And I think a famous photographer helped him pick the lenses, and because he was working with photographers as an art director. And so this was when my father got more automated cameras, better cameras. He gave me his first. Well, to me, the 35mm was like journalism, and I wanted to make art. But it was a coincidence that a square format, because the Hasselblad, then I got a Hasselblad, like the works in the hallway, they're square. I started working with a medium format camera, but the medium format camera is meant to be in the studio, is meant to be on a tripod, and normally still. And later you can cut it for the magazine format. I mean, of course, a lot of artists also use the square as a design, but I think the camera was invented for studio work. And so I enjoyed having a larger format, so a bigger negative to have more detail. But now I had, because I had a Hasselblad, which was a great present again from my father, I had the challenge of a square. So to go from a 35mm long, negative, small, to a complete square, I learned how to compose my pictures in a square. But also I really enjoyed the looking down in the camera, because you look inside down, not in front of your face. And so you would be removed from your subject on the other side. You were more private, you weren't like this, so you look down. And I liked when you moved, everything seemed wrong, because you move into one direction, but somehow everything is flipped. So it was like a upside down world that didn't make sense without gravity, and I enjoyed this because seeing my subject strange, opposite, flipped, it helped me to not know what I see, and I started to be attracted to just the shape of things. But I always liked to use the whole frame. When I used 35mm, I used the whole shape, and I designed my work from the beginning inside the camera pretty much. And then, so then I used medium format camera, but mostly like a snapshot camera on the street. And if I was at a party with a lot of people, I had a generator with a battery, and I would take my flash, and then I would hold my camera and flash. And I remember thinking, would it be great to have a small camera to make so much detail and to be able to hold it? So we have an iPhone now who can do everything that we dreamt of. I think that's kind of excellent. It was also in the 90s, they started to make snapshot cameras that were great, like the Yashica T24, I think. You also had a little window on top. You can just be like this. I mean, but I always like to use the medium format camera like a snapshot camera, but it's heavy, expensive. If you go to a party, you're always like, okay, do I have the camera? Do I have the camera? You can only wear outfits that don't scratch the camera. You know, you can't wear a dress. So I always had to think about carrying this big camera. And then when I left New York, I didn't have a dark room anymore, but I was still shooting film, and I never looked at it. And then years later, I scanned it, and then they started making digital cameras. And I was excited because I didn't have the possibility to have a laboratory. I didn't want to build a laboratory. And Frankfurt didn't have rental laboratories, so I was waiting for digital cameras to get really good. And then I invested again in a good medium format digital camera, but the new format was not a square anymore. Now in the digital cameras you can change the format. You can say, I want a square, I want a panorama, you can have anything you want, but I kind of use the size of the chip. And the chip is now the size of these works. So it's a kind of fat rectangular shape. It's not the square, it's not the thin 35, but it's a nice fat rectangular shape, and I normally use it like in these works like a portrait mode. So the camera is turned up, and it's more rare that I make a horizontal landscape. But I enjoy, especially for the reflections, it's beautiful to work on the computer with it, because in the dark room you would have to play with the paper and the contrast, and I think I wouldn't make the reflections like this if I only had an analog camera, because here you can really change the contrast and you can see what you get, and I enjoy developing the negative or the file on the computer. Well, I think analog is nostalgic. It's from yesterday. It's why use analog today? I think maybe it has a purpose if you use it conceptually. Maybe you want to photograph less, because if you slow down your process, like with a big camera or with film, you only have 36 or 12 on a roll. You get better if you slow yourself down. But I don't see a reason, because the cameras are good in digital, and I like to report from the moment now. I went to 2 art schools for my Bachelor of Art. That was only in the end I took photography. I don't remember having a teacher there, mostly thinking about subject matter, like representation of women in film. So it was more theoretical teaching. But then when I got my first real photography teacher. It was Raghibir Singh, an Indian photographer. And I didn't want to take the class. My other teacher, Charles Straub, he forced me. He goes, "You have to take the class." And I thought, oh no, he's so traditional. He is very photojournalistic. I want to make art, and why am I in this class? I heard he's really mean. I heard he's very, not mean, but strict and difficult, and so I was scared to take the class. And I was pushed in, and then I was very happy because he taught me find a reason why to use photography. He goes, if you have an idea, why not then draw it, paint it, or use a mechanism to Xerox your idea, make a sculpture, but why photography? What is photography? It's a frame, it's a moment, and it's a camera. So he really made me think to use photography for what photography can do, and not like a Xerox machine of an idea. So I stopped constructing ideas. I wanted to use the camera for the moment. Yeah, and he was really great at books, showing you how to construct a book. And he had a big love for color. He said, think about what does the color mean in your culture? Why blue? What religion is your culture? So he said, he was Indian, he died, so I say was. So he asked, red means something different in India than in Europe. So he really taught me very fundamental things. And he also, he said things like, why did you place that dog in the corner? Or why did you place the little light in the top corner? And I was like, I didn't place it there, it was there. And he goes, no, you placed it there. And then I was like, oh, okay. So even if I do a more documentary style, I can put all these things there like a painter. And I started to be more awake to place things there. So that's Raghibir Singh, who was teaching at the School of Visual Arts in the master's program in New York. And he became, for a very short moment, at the Museum of Modern Art, the head of the photography department. But then he died very fast after. Oh yeah, like teachers and photographers alike. Well, I really like Larry Fink, and I like his personality. I met him maybe once or twice in New York, and I just really like his love for people, his respect, and just love for life. That, like, somebody who's always thinks life is worth it to continue, to make more work, to show the situation of people and feelings, and I like his engagement in loving relationships in photography. And also he was a photographer who dealt with the square. So in the time when I worked with the square, I really liked seeing his boxing photographs, because he had a subject matter very male about boxers. And then it looked so artistic when he did it with a square camera, showing the edge of the frame in black. When I discovered Sauleiter lately, like everybody else, I felt like I've been looking at the work a lot, and it's been teaching me things. I didn't meet him in person, but I felt when I saw the work like, oh wow, there's somebody who thinks similar. And I felt like I found a similar spirit, and I felt like, oh wow, if he makes a picture of nothing with a corner of something, I can do that too. So it taught me I can trust what I find interesting, because he also had and I like reading about him, I like his humor. And then discovering recently Vivian Mayer, I also enjoy looking at that. I can identify with her view, and many. I love looking at photographs, old photographs. Countess Castiglione, the woman who's actually a subject from old time Paris, the countess who always liked to be photographed in her new dresses and being different people, being like the first Cindy Sherman. I'm a nun, I'm a whore, I show you my legs, I'm mourning in a black dress. She used camera like a theater, posing. I like her. Cindy Sherman. Yeah, I like a lot of photography. I mean, times are changing so much. Maybe it was at a certain time okay for some kind of the old idea, maybe, oh, I have an idea as a man, and then I'd put naked women in it. That's a different era. Or maybe I'll have naked ballet dancers in it. Maybe that was okay in 1980, 1990, to use woman as an object. But I really enjoy also how Helmut Newton did it. I really liked the work. He used women as an object, but somehow I thought it was different. Then also Saul Leiter has portraits of naked women. I think he found them beautiful. I'm sure they were also objects of desire for him. Yeah, I think there is a difference. I think maybe, do you know the term to be looked at? It's like, I can look at you, or I can be to be looked at. Like maybe to be looked at would be like this. Like this, I pose my body so somebody can look at me. And in feminist theory, they say, we women have to be looked at-ness. We walk around life knowing men look at us. So maybe in a film theory way, maybe women photograph other women knowing that we are looked at, and maybe men photograph women looking at them with desire. The classical machinery would be a woman looking like an object, selling you lipstick. But some people are very free. They can maybe just see people like people. I don't know. Some people have desire for men and women similarly. I don't know. It's a hard subject, but yeah, I think men photograph women differently than. But then there's still maybe it depends. But of course, there's the very stereotypical way a man looks at a woman. But it doesn't always happen. Yeah, some are very loving view of the other person, and some maybe more objectified. But sometimes I can't tell. There's some women that really objectify. Some women really objectify women too. They look more like a man at a woman than a man. I don't know, maybe who? I'm not sure. I think Annie Leibovitz, I don't think she looks like a woman looking at a woman only. I think she's very, I don't know. I think it's a difficult question, but a nice question because it's so multiple. You can dive and look at all history and. Yeah, and the poem is also the main text in the book that I just made. And the title of her poem is also the title of the exhibition and the book. Everything is always so perfect when you are in it. It evolved. I asked her to write something. I sent her pictures, and the words is out of her knowing my work and out of specific things in my photographs. Yeah, my sister is an artist. She lives in Berlin, and she mainly is known for her stage project called Susi Asaro. She's a singer and songwriter, but she works as a creative writing teacher, and she writes lyricism and poetry and short stories, and she works with a lot of other writers and editing the works together. She's in a community. So so that's her life, her work, and so it's a great pleasure to have somebody who really knows me write about the photography. And when she finished writing, I really enjoyed it because I was looking for a text for the book, and I didn't want something that explains the work and has to explain me. I wanted something that's like a background, or something like a music that is like a mise en scène, like the scenery of the work. So she provided that, and I really enjoyed it, and I had the feeling that it put the work all together. And then I looked at the title, and I liked how complex it was. I had a very banal, simple title. I'm not going to tell you. It was too simple. And I had a hard time finding a title, and then I really enjoyed this long title. And the publishing company calls my book the book with a long title. And I choose that because, yeah, it is difficult to explain my work. But I don't want to give answers. I think everybody has their own answers, but I can offer maybe my sense for poetry and life. Sometimes it gets people excited, and sometimes it turns people off. They're like, why? Yeah. This is recent work. I think it's 2018. And I left New York before 9/11, before the buildings came down. And I missed it by half a year, I think. And then I never went to the site to see what happened afterwards. I never went to Ground Zero. I never saw the new buildings. And so this was the first time I went there again, and I expected to have some kind of experience like a church, and I heard about the building, saw pictures of Calatrava, these big spine building, kind of looking like the broken buildings, the metal beams. So I really went with it was a beautiful day, clouds, sun, and I went with the expectation I was going to have some kind of really emotional, sad experience or intensive experience. So I go there with the train, and I get out of the station, and I see the building. I'm like, oh wow, this is incredible. I walk inside, and then I see it's an Apple store, it's a Gucci store, I'm like, wow, I thought this would be all empty, like a church, people can go there, but it was now occupied by corporations and companies. People are going in and out. It's a train station. So I was like, okay, life goes on. And then I go outside, and I'm thinking, oh wow, there's a wine tasting. And then I saw this advertising of a woman flying in the sky with champagne in her hand. And I'm like, how can this be in a place where all these people jumped to the death? Wealthy people, bankers jumped outside because they didn't want to burn. And in an area where bodies fell on the ground, to make this kind of advertising of falling bodies, celebrating falling with a bottle in your hand in a nice cocktail dress. I was like, this is so crazy. This is complete cultural amnesia. Nobody remembers anything. We can go shopping and we can drink wine. And I was thinking, wow, who makes this advertising in this area without thinking People died here. And then I took photos. I went inside and I went drinking wine, enjoyed the day, took more pictures, but I was like in disbelief. And then I mean, this happened already when Trump presidency and everything is kind of crazy and very hot in New York. And then also part of the picture which makes it really of the moment is the flags on the right, because John McCain died and they put the flags on half height, which is the American tradition to have respect for former leaders and politicians. But it was such a big issue in America because Trump didn't want the flag to be half. He was struggling with his own respect and he didn't want to respect McCain. So I find it kind of funny because it's just decoration in the picture, but if Trump could have won and not have half-mast, then the flags would not be in the picture. They would be too high. So in the picture, to me it's interesting because it's very historical. It's very like a documentary photo, but it's also like a poem. It's of a woman floating and clouds in the sky and fabric and flags, and it's also like a composition of a abstract painting. It has a half circle, it has bold areas. It's kind of really has a lot of things in it, photographic and artistic things. And when I find it later after having taken that picture, I get very excited. I'm like, wow, that's something magic. Yeah. And represented the feeling too that I had there, but also joyful. It's not like a negative picture. It's also very pretty. Maybe because I can combine two things with each other. Yeah, like a real life collage, and I can somehow study, because I can study how two worlds come together and the desire of perfect advertising, of beautiful women, and then the reality, and then something happens to color and light, and that's unpredictable, and I like to find later things I didn't see. That's kind of the biggest joy about my work, that I cannot control it. And maybe through the work of the reflections, I can have more fun because I cannot control it at all, especially when people walk. Like in the other room, the one with the people on the street walking, I can try to anticipate, oh, okay, here's a car, a person is coming. I can just kind of hope that they're not blocked by a big object. And I kind of like that. That's exciting. That's maybe like playing pool or doing something like maybe shooting an arrow is like trying to find perfection and an answer, truth and beauty. And I think reflections, they're a lot of fun for me to do because I right away want to see what happened. Well, a lot of times I will choose something that has light on it. Like the sun comes and hits an object, it helps to see it and it helps to make a nice picture of it. But I also think about archetype shapes, like maybe bottle, doorway, crosses. There's a book called Das System der Dinge, The System of Objects, and I find like systems interesting. We have like cross, circle, rectangles, and it becomes abstract, like a formula or but mostly it's if there's beautiful light, then I see it. I'm like, and if it has a shadow. Trying to think about the pictures here. Yeah. And I also like very basic things like glass, bottle, chair, like a lot of artists like Van Gogh's chair, or the really basic things we use as humans, or a tree. They all become like the essential symbol of something. Or I like also light switches and sockets. Maybe because they're so basic, and then you can work with it, and yeah, they're so essential and very basic that both in one I like again. I think I adjust to my environment, maybe. That if you are in an area that is vast and you see maybe a lot of people walking in the street, then I'm thinking, oh, a good opportunity to maybe make a landscape mode thing. But then, like, I might look in a corner and I see something that asks to be a portrait. So maybe the thing that stays the same is maybe a word, I don't know. The German word is a Haltung. It's like your opinion maybe, or how you stand in life. Maybe your main story. And then things happen and I can adjust. I mean, sometimes I'm worried that I don't make sense because something like this is maybe so different. Well, this is kind of maybe similar to me than the portrait of the two black sculptures with the two women in front of it. It's somehow a construction that tells a story about, like here, the young boy leaves, or a girl, you don't know, but a young person leaving into the landscape, maybe from the time conquering the landscape, making important works, and here is a person who takes a picture of the world, and then there's a house. So this becomes kind of like an allegorical big saga or something that maybe can be the placeholder then, or the main idea for things that are maybe just small moments, or like having a déjà vu or something of a big saga. Maybe my horizontal pictures are more like an explanation in a long way of the moments I want to show, when it's more like a portrait. I work very intuitively. I don't really construct it before, so I always try to find what is it that interests me, but I'm sure it's something that makes sense, I hope. But I'm never so sure.